they actually found themselves walking around the world, and they'd got to the Black Sea, and the choice was... Welcome to the Adventure Habits podcast, where we interview some of the finest adventurers in the world, and we try and glean from them the 5 top habits that they have that you can take into your daily life to improve your chances of adventure and to therefore have a much more happier and productive life. And today I'm really delighted to have with me one of my co-adventurers in life. The guy that helped set up SplashMaps in the first instance, has been with it right from day one, through secrets and whatever at the beginning, through to being out in the open splash mapping person, our very own technocrat and capable map making person, Ian Holt. Say hi, Ian.
Hi, David. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Pleasure to be here, by the way.
Yeah, it's a super pleasure to have you here because, I mean, most often than not, you're not actually even in this country at the moment, are you?
No, I take the adventure part very seriously and make sure I'm as far away as possible. But put into place, some of the adventure habits we'll discuss. I think, try to live up to them.
I think so. There should be a good smorgasbord of stuff in there. So right now, where are you living when you're not here in Hampshire?
Oh, I see. Well, I've been spending a bit of time in Southeast Asia. Currently just come back from Manila in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Why? Mainly because I was working with a whole load of Filipinos in a previous job, and they sold me on the country, and they didn't do it a disservice at all. I think it's it's a wonderful place, and it's somewhat off the beaten track. So I think even when I was doing some backpacking in that region, it was always the places that everyone goes to: Thailand, Indonesia, Cambodia, those sort of places.
On the beaten track.
Yeah, and the Philippines was always dubbed as the scary place that you don't go to, and I really wanted to visit there as well, and so that's been, to me, in my mind, has been completely flipped on its head.
Yeah, and I that comes after a long life career of travelling. You started off out in Kiribati, or your parents got a job.
Costa Rica.
Oh, right. Run me through it.
So I think this was my downfall, really. There was a conversation that my dad had with my daughter at one point, apologising that he had taken his son to far-flung places, which had instilled an idea of visiting foreign countries, and that constantly yearning for this kept me awake too many times, I think. But yeah, we at the age of 7 went out to Costa Rica for 7 years, and then in Kiribati, which is a chain of islands in the Central Pacific, for about 5 years, and then various jobs which took me all over the world doing different consultancy
Sure,
jobs.
You lived in America for a while, and Australia?
Yeah, America for one period for 6 months solid in Denver, and then Australia for nearly 2 years, New Zealand for a year. So you're like a constant kind of immigrant traveller worker? Not as much as some. I see a lot of people doing a lot more, but I think always looking for somewhere. New Zealand was always the place that I wanted to be home. So I was always looking for somewhere that would give me more of a sense of, I don't know what, adventure? Let's call it that.
I think we should. It seems appropriate somehow. And then we met at Ordnance Survey, and I was in innovation within their research function, and you started up the skunk work. So I mean, just tell us, what was your kind of remit there, and what was your kind of the things that you put together that perhaps people can take much more for granted now? So
I'll answer that in a slightly different way. I think it's the same way, but it's a slightly different angle. So before, all the jobs I had were worked for other geospatial companies, but they were all very much consultancy work. And when I was invited to join the Ordnance Survey, it was under creating. There was a lot of new management in at the time, and they wanted to reinvigorate what Ordnance Survey was doing.
I remember it well.
And one of the things they wanted to do was to take innovation not just externally, so that's what the research department did, but they also wanted to bring some innovation, or have a way of bringing innovation into the organisation as well. So they dubbed it Skunk Works after the famous American Lockheed Martin innovation lab. And it was a small unit that was meant to take innovation into the IT department. and its success could be judged in another conversation. But what was interesting for me, which is to answer your question, is I never really considered innovation or doing a different way of things. It was very much you do a job, you do it according to what the organization wants you to do, and you try to do that as best as you can. However, I hired a couple of people fairly early on who really introduced me to the idea of innovation, of starting companies, of doing different things, different ways, and outside generally the remit of your 9 to 5, so that it would and it would be things that you're interested in that otherwise might not be in the market. And learning about that and having people being so outside almost clandestine meetings to do that was quite invigorating and quite different from what I'd done before. And so it was in a sense an adventure, but it was quite different in being able to do. In my life, I'd never come across that, and unfortunately, it's meant that ever since that point, since 2003. No, actually, when they got hired about 2005. So maybe for at least for 20 years, I've been involved in businesses and startups in one way or another to varying degrees of success.
Yeah. Well, and it's great to be here with you still after 12 years since we started SplashMaps. And the kind of kernel from your story there and the kind of parallels that we had before that. And I joined innovation on the research side, as you've said. And I found it very, very difficult because my idea, my job was to get new ideas into this very stiff civil service organisation. And that was challenging. What was interesting, though, was that you and I both had the same boss above us, who's now a shareholder in SplashMaps after spending, he spent 13 years as Google's geographer as well, Ed Parsons.
Yeah.
So, there's quite a lot that's tied us together then. And it's still constant now. But I first knew you outside of the kind of work environment, apart from, the usual kind of get-togethers and pubs and stuff. There was a bit of stuff with some European collaborative work that was going on. But then really it was those meetups that you and I would have with other colleagues down at the Potter's Heron in just outside Chandler's Ford. We would sit there and we would have a few drinks and we would work out businesses that we could run together. I think I was remembering with you the other day that we actually launched 3 businesses out of that pub get-together, only the last of which was SplashMaps, and the first 2 were very much more data and service driven, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really. I would argue there are certain times in either a person's career or in an industry where exciting things truly happen. And I would say the 2000s for the geospatial industry were really interesting, because that's effectively when the precursor and Google Maps itself came out, which changed the landscape and how, no pun intended, and literally how people perceived mapping, because suddenly it went from something that was very specialist or was this clunky click-through map to something that now I mean, Google bought the technology in many ways, but they made it available to everyone. But to something that I can now pan and zoom so easily and effortlessly, and then phone manufacturers start putting it on the phone. Suddenly it's available to everyone. So there was a great conference series in that period called Where, and I went a couple of times and presented there about what we were doing on the survey. But I remember seeing some of the people that would have never have been associated with geography, from people using pigeons to map air quality over cities, to women of the night being able to use it for safety reasons. Just a whole myriad of people that would have, and it was a really flourishing time for innovation, and that's probably happening now around AI as well.
But and I think we see quite a lot of that through Geomob as well. The extension of those ideas is now in a regular meetup that we have in London, now extended out to Berlin and Barcelona. It seems like everywhere that begins with the letter B now. I mean, it's got such spread. But those ideas seem to come through that as well. And we're also working on funky projects like, driverless cars. When I think about that, that was back in 2005 or thereabouts. And the boring stuff that sat underneath all of it was almost like that harmonization job. How do you get all this international stuff to work together? And so when we came out out of that and we had our business idea and we did SplashMaps, I always think of it as ridiculously quickly that we were able to, because of the background and the knowledge that we had, to build a business where within a year we were doing personalized maps of any way that you could choose on the planet, let alone the fact that we were putting it on fabric. That was like a first in at least a couple of areas. And, you know, we've kind of built upon that as time goes on, using, you know, your knowledge of services and then the connections that we've had, the brilliant people. I think SplashMaps is more like it's almost like a network. It's not necessarily a lot of people that work at SplashMaps or say that they work at SplashMaps, but it's certainly a big network of capability that we've built over our careers and lives, and you know, it's become the kind of SplashMaps family. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's for me, if I was to think what has been some of the exciting things about SplashMaps, I mean, in some ways the technology has existed. There's nothing really we're doing there, but bringing back a format that hasn't been used since effectively the Second World War era. Because needs and wants have changed, but bringing that back and finding that there is actually a market for that is very interesting. What has been a big thing for me has been learning that that selling physical products is very different to selling digital products. Before, everything I was doing was about digital products, digital software, data, all those sort of things. Now, actually, it's a whole different set of skills learning how to sell physical products and how getting people excited about those. And, you know, that takes form about what skills you have to around cartography and those sort of things, about what catches people's eye.
Yeah, it's about how you prioritize things that's actually going to trigger people to want to put their hands in their pockets and end up with, you know, let's face it, the most versatile format that you can have a map on.
And the other thing is really being able to work with people from around the world in your, I mean, I call it a team, but in the SplashMaps umbrella, you know, we've got a developer in New Zealand. We've got me in the Philippines sometimes. We've got various people based in the UK. We sometimes have people in the US. So we use people where best it suits us. And that's a change that's happened probably over the last 10, 15 years in terms of business in general.
And our supplier for the US stuff is based in Canada, so it's a really properly networked global business. And it's to me, it's very exciting that two blokes can, you know, get that out of this. You know, you go back 10, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, let's face it, 10 years ago we were starting this. 20 years ago, it would just not be feasible at all.
I think probably a bit further back, but it wouldn't be feasible. I think a lot changed. Lots changed in the 2000s about startups and about people's desire. And I think entrepreneurialism was probably more of a dirty word in the 90s than it is now. Yeah, I don't have any facts around that, so I could be completely wrong. But I don't feel. But certainly now, if you are starting business, it's always seen as everyone. I don't like calling it a side hustle, but almost it's recommended that anybody in a job should also have a side hustle. Yeah, because you don't know the uncertainty around jobs and finances and everything else means that you should always be thinking of what else can I do to bring in some extra revenue.
This sounds like this beginning of a habit coming through, and of course this is the Adventure Habits podcast, and so you're not going to get away without actually feeding us some. Would you say that's your habit number one, to have kind of like a diverse portfolio of things that you do, just so that you've got a secure basis in life?
I don't know. I think I would have been my number one, if I could change it, was going to be to not be afraid to talk to people. And I think quite often in, not just in life, but particularly when you're adventuring, people tend to think that they have all their plans sorted out and that's it, they're going to execute it that way. So whether that's from your business idea through to sitting in a hostel thinking you're going to, you know, which next hostel you're going to, but actually you're making a huge number of assumptions based on what you've read and what you've pre-planned. But plans, as I can't remember the correct saying, but change in face of the enemy, right? So as soon as you start talking to people, you realize actually there's some reason you might not be able to do something, or there might be something better to do. And I think it's not a great world for introverts. I think, you don't have to be a crazy extrovert, but I think the more you engage with people just generally, the more you'll get out of it. I know, David, you've been talking to a whole variety of business people. Certainly, even if a week goes by, you'll tell me the number of people you've spoken to, and some of those will bear fruit. If you were shy of talking to people, you would not even hear of a number of opportunities that would arise.
Well, that's absolutely true. One of our big customers is Lush, and that came about just by being the sort of nutter that talks to people on trains. So Paul Mark Constantine got my opinions on his owl book, and and that led to some pretty good business that lasted us over the years. So I fully buy into that one, but both as something that you'd give to a traveller. And I think both you and I have got adult age kids now who are going out on their first adventures around the world. But it also holds up very much for how life goes after that, with the networking and all that sort of stuff. Having that kind of ability to just rock up to people and start chatting with them.
Yeah, and sometimes it manifests itself quite naturally. I don't mean you need to be sort of overtly pushy, but I think that. Can I do my second one?
You can do. I've got your first one. It's written down.
Okay,
there we go.
Okay, so number 2, they all sort of feed off that, really. I think number 2 is not to have, to me, is not to, again, I kind of alluded to it, it's not to have such fixed plans. And I'm thinking more of my daughter right now, because she's going off to Thailand on Sunday for a month of travelling around. And she's very much a person who likes to have everything planned. Whereas I keep telling her, no, get a flight to Bangkok, get your first night in a hostel or 2 nights, so you know where you're going to be staying the first couple of nights. Roughly have an idea of where you want to go, but don't be, and when you want to leave. But don't be too prescribed. And I think that again applies throughout life. I think if you're too rigidly set on a course, you can be very easily derailed, and you can easily also miss out on opportunities that you might not have recognised from the outset. So for me, my second one would certainly be, don't be too fixed in your plans. That's
great. A bit of living with the looseness and stuff. And it reminds me of what Chris Howard said in episode 3. And I think his came under, say yes to stuff. But he went back to when he was late teens, and he just saw a rucksack in an army surplus store, bought the rucksack, and that led to a train of thought, which led to another train of thought, which led to an airline ticket to Bangkok.
Oh, really?
And then, before he was out of his teens rather, he'd walked the whole of the coastline of Southeast Asia. And when you think about that, I mean, you and I have seen quite a lot of that coastline. We only see the nice sandy bits, right? But he did the whole lot on foot. So
that was a twisty-turny coastline as well.
Yeah. So look out for Maya staying out there a little bit longer than you might intend.
Well, that's fine. I've always thought it would be kind of nice for. I always thought it would be kind of nice for anybody to suddenly change the plans, like people who have. We met a couple many years ago who both of them, I think, had just got jobs at JP Morgan, and at that time it was JP Morgan, one of the other big accountancy sort of financial firms, who were, when you join the company, they'll give you 6 months off or something like that, and you could go off. The idea was you'll go off and get some travelling out of your system or whatever you want to do, because the next 40 years you're going to be chained to your desk,
stuck in the financial world.
So, and we all know that it never gets out of your system, but they would. So the idea was to get it out of the system, and they were very much. I hoped, hearing them talk and the experiences they had, I would always hope that they would find something else. They would go somewhere and suddenly decide that they wanted to be yoga instructors or Muay Thai professionals or English teachers, or just something that nobody expected, but that they were happy about doing it.
Yeah. That's good. Well, that's very insightful. Well, very, very, that's great of JP Morgan. I wonder if there are other businesses that do that sort of thing. But I guess as big employers, they just need to let people. I guess I imagine there's a lot more adventurers or people that are looking for that travel part of adventure today than there were like 40 or 50 years ago. That's for sure.
Well, I would say it's changed. I think before, I would say, and again, I'm talking about backpacker type travellers, not the people who plan expeditions down the Zambezi and those sort of things.
Our friend John Blashford Snell.
Exactly, yes. Who will be on a later podcast, I hope.
He will be, and will be our guest at the Armchair Adventure Festival at the end of July, so that weekend of the 24th of July.
And for anybody considering going, it's probably one of the best adventure festivals there is.
Nobody regrets seeing John Blashford Snell, and nobody could regret going to the Armchair Adventure Festival. It's an absolutely beautiful event, and we've been many times. We've been sponsors and partners of it for all these years as well.
But yeah, I mean, again, the adventure can come under. We always talk about an adventure could be the moment you step out your front door. I've always had, for me, the one I've wanted to do all my life, the one I want to do, hopefully, before I lose the capability. I hope that actually, if I'm senile enough, I'll just wander off and do it. But because I remember reading about this old geezer who was in a care home, and he was like, right, I want to go to France. I can't remember where it was, and he just left one day and got on the ferry and ended up in France, wherever he wanted to go. And I thought, good for you. Life isn't just about sort of rotting away and reliving your memories. But the one I've wanted to do along those lines is always a Trans-Siberian. And if it wasn't for certain geopolitics going on at the moment, which make it quite difficult, I would love to go back to Southeast Asia by just walking out my door. I just like the idea of walking out my door, walking to the train station, getting on a train, and train after train after train, I'll eventually find myself on the other side of the world. I don't know why it appeals. It's just, I mean, it is a long journey, but it's the idea of never having to get into a plane.
I think there is supposed to be a way of doing it now, and I saw an adventurer the other day. My apologies to whoever it was, but I can't remember the name. But they actually found themselves walking around the world, and they'd got to the Black Sea, and the choice was either down through Iran, where as a British national he wasn't welcome, or north through Russia, where as a British national he wasn't welcome. His solution was to swim across the Black Sea. So the whole so I think
he had seen how big it was on the map.
Don't leave it too long.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a big sea.
That is a bloody big sea.
Sure.
It's a sea-size sea.
Sure, he didn't have scale issues on his map. Maybe he should have bought a splash map.
I don't know. He's from Hull.
Okay.
People write in. Let me know who this superhero is, because it was an extraordinary story that gobsmacked me. But I'm sorry, I didn't pick up what his name was. Okay, so we're on to habit number 3. Okay. Do you have a third one? Or?
I'm going to steal my son's one, who just mentioned it recently, which is confidence.
Thank you, Xander. Okay, confidence. Okay, tell us about confidence.
So I think, again, there is a large element of confidence. And I think one thing is that people who are less confident, it can all go horribly wrong, but people who are less confident after they've done some sort of travelling or adventuring become more confident. And and maybe that's one of the things that some of these organisations send people off to do is to gain confidence, whether that's just talking to people or doing things on your own, or not worrying about and that one I'll come back to, but just really so that you just, and in life having that confidence will go a long way. Of course, you've got to have skills and experience and knowledge, but couple that with confidence. I don't mean about being obnoxious, but couple that with always right about everything. But couple that with confidence, and again, it will set you a long way in life.
Love that. That's been one of our brand values right from the start. Confidence in your adventure, and how could you be less confident than having a fabulous fabric map in your pocket of wherever you're going. So, whether it's of the whole country or whether it's the adventuring space you're going to be going into.
But I think that applies very much to the business that we started as well. I think that we went through a number of startups. Oh my goodness. And
it was hard work,
through
unprofitable.
through different types of people's personalities, through to over-ambitious ideas.
I mean, right at the nuts and bolts end. So we were talking about it yesterday, that the business that you and John started with, capturing people's IP addresses, wider, that's it. And you would go around in a car and you'd actually be picking up the Wi-Fi signals from around the neighbourhood to have an alternative positioning system.
Correct. Yes.
Absolutely amazing stuff, but real nuts and bolts stuff, right?
Yeah. But I think if you don't, it's almost like again the try again type thing.
Yeah.
If at first you don't succeed, because you will learn every single time. People will probably say this again. It's a very oft repeated comment, but you do learn from your mistakes. It's okay. And again, people say this, it is actually genuinely okay to fail. I mean, obviously, don't cripple yourself financially or in any other way. But but the most important thing is try to learn from it. If you don't learn, then you'll keep on repeating the same mistakes. But
too right.
I think SplashMaps was very much like that. We had a lot of early startups. So some of them were quite simple, like absolutely no market research. Did anybody want X, Y, and Z, whatever crazy idea we come up with? Realizing that actually it was of no interest to anybody. So
actually, I'd argue that the two businesses that we actually registered with Companies House before SplashMaps, those ideas have now gone into the creative space, and someone made a much better.
Which is fine, which is also fine. And that confidence thing comes in two other forms, which is one, just because somebody else is doing the same idea doesn't mean you will fail at your idea. There can be more than one person doing that idea.
Yeah.
And again, just because you don't give up too easily is probably part of that confidence. Just don't give up on your idea too easily. If you hit a roadblock, again, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. And again, that applies to all form of adventures. There's usually a way around it.
There's got to be an element of persistence, I guess, even if you are traveling and you're trying to, like that guy, deciding to go swim instead of going overland. I mean, having limited choices sometimes helps you make a confident, there's only one way I can do this kind of thing. A persistence kicks in.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling you the story last night about how we were stopped twice within 5 minutes by the police in Manila.
Yeah, they
for
were
very dubious reasons, I might add, considering no one else but the foreigner was being stopped for these reasons.
Yeah.
Yet everyone else was committing the same thing. So, you do kind of, but like I said, and I won't go into any more detail, there are ways around this.
Yeah, I mean, to them, you're the immigrant, aren't you? So I guess if you're in that state, then it's kind of that you stick out. Yes. That's it. Okay, so we're on to habit 4.
Gosh, I'm struggling.
Yeah, well, you might need to see if I can seed it with something. Right, so we've got Nick in the room with us here as well, who interviewed me on episode 9. This is actually our 10th episode, so we're into double figures now. He, I wouldn't say accused me, but he did kind of bring up the technophobe question. So why have we gone, when your background is so technical, where does the technology lie in this sort of thing? And what... I don't know. Is there a habit that comes out of that?
So I like to build on things. I like to think that something isn't always the end product, that there's always something else to come. I think there's a challenge in producing something onto fabric. Then there's the next challenge, which was, well, how do we double-side that? Because every time we had attempted to do that, or with other people, it would always end up with just the print shining through and effectively both sides being unusable. So that's sort of a migration. But ultimately, and I've said this a number of times before, David's just showing. Are you showing us a double-sided one?
Yeah, so that's the double-sided one. With that one, it's one I used just last week. 50,000 on one side, 25,000 on the other side, and covers that section, 42 miles of the
so that's really great. I mean,
part.
Especially the two scales type option, because typically double-sided, even when printed on paper, are a continuation or just increasing the map area by using both sides. But I think having the two different scales, one which is walkable, one which is the overview, is very much but for me, there's also, where do we go with this? Where can you take something that's on a... For me, the fabric was a flexible background, and we've explored this through SplashMaps, and we have nowhere near come to the end of this journey. In fact, we're waiting for technology to catch up with our ideas. Yeah. So again, Hollywood tends to often bring out or extrapolate future scenarios. You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
For those of you who want to watch, I would say it was not the best film. A movie called Babylon AD with Vin Diesel. And in it, he opens the boot of his car. He pulls out what looks like a foldable paper map, and he suddenly starts interacting with it like it was a screen on a phone or on a tablet. So he's pinch zooming, he's panning with his fingers. Now, for me, I wanted to see that. I want to see a fabric map material. So learning about e-fabrics and e-textiles and all those sort of things where you can illuminate stuff, says to me that that's a direction of travel. That at some point the fabrics are going to be way more intelligent than they are now.
Yeah.
Now, it may not be for a while, but we did a number of experiments under SplashMaps and product prototypes with the University of Southampton, which proved to us that we could embed electronics into a fabric that made it retain its fabricness. It's put it in the washing machine, that it can feel, scrunch it up, you can shove it in your pocket, but still it will illuminate on the surface where I am. It will illuminate not where I am, but where other people are. Now, isn't that to me is really exciting. And so we're on a journey to improving we're not just stopping at printing on maps, but we're actually wanting that technology to develop. And for me, that makes the whole journey quite exciting.
It is, and we are ahead of the game on that one, and it's because we've just ploughed quite a lot into the research side. We've had years between 2020 and 2023 where about at least 50% of our income went into the R&D stuff that we were doing about electronic maps and all of that stuff, and in parallel upping the game with our website so that what you see is what you get. So we've done so much that side. And I actually asked a question at the International Mapping Industry Association just a few weeks ago. Where does the mapping world see map interfaces going? And there was a lot of scratched heads and stuff, and eventually someone from the big tech company in our sector is Esri, and they piped up that they thought it's going to be corneal implants. And I thought, I would so like there to be some other stepping stone between this
body modification
fabric map and corneal implants, It's got to be something. And I guess that's what we're traversing. It's the stuff that will be out there in 20 years when, hopefully someone else is running this business.
Yeah, mean, I'm happy even if our contribution is to somehow push the ideas forward.
Yeah, I think that's it. Get the idea there, and then someone else, as you said this one I'm putting down as your build on things type habit. So you've got one more habit. Have you thought of another one?
Well, I have, but I would say don't. So for me, it's I'll explain it and see how best to encapsulate it in a phrase. I see so many times people get all uppity about not visiting places or not doing something or not doing an experience because it's not new, it's not the latest thing. If you go there'll be 10,000 people at this viewpoint, or 1 million people have taken that Instagram photo. I want to be the first person to put my feet on this beach that no one has ever been to. Chances of you finding that really freaking slim. Also, the reason places are popular is because they are nice. Yeah. Right. So I think you can.
They're not nice because there's loads of people in them, right?
They're not nice. I mean, it is annoying that there are a lot of people there. I was at a place a place called Baguio in the Philippines, which is on the main island of Luzon. It's a bit north of Manila, and it's very cool and where a lot of people go when the weather gets really hot in the summer. And there are a lot of viewpoints looking over the hills, and it's very pretty. But there are hundreds of people also trying to look. But the reason is because it is a nice place to go look, and it's kind of hard to find places that aren't full of lots of people. And I get it. I get why you want to feel it more, the serenity that a lot of Instagram photos might sell you. But the reality is, to me, is that I think you need to mix what is seen as being everyone does with maybe something more unique.
Something that's because that really makes me think. I found a title for this one.
Okay,
so if you like it, I've nicked it from you in the first place.
Good. Okay.
It's actually your Instagram account, Finding My Utopia. Is it Finding My
Seeking my Utopia? I hadn't found it yet.
So But I guess the essence is there. I think, maybe that's finding your own. Yes, we call it seeking your own utopia.
And I think that's probably a lifelong thing. I think everyone looks for it, and I think it changes. It changes throughout your life. At one point, it might be how am I going to do something? How can I get out of school and do something else? Through to how can I escape from what my parents have done to doing something else, to having children, to and all of these things can build on. And I think that notion of what is your utopia will changes, and I think it has to.
Yeah, it would definitely change with time. I think it has for both of us, and neither of us would think that we'd be here right now.
But my daughter's a good example of this. Like I said, she's just off to Thailand, and she said, "Oh, should I go to these places? Because everyone goes." I said, yes, you go there because it will probably be interesting. I mean, take your own opinion whether seeing the 25th Buddha on top of a hill is actually of consequence. But, if it does speak to you, just go do it. Don't worry that there's a load of other people there.
Because you can't know until you go there, right?
Yeah, but the trouble is, I think people read too much into something. Like, rather than going somewhere and go, okay, I'll go climb that mountain because it's kind of interesting to me, they will do all the research. It's like people who go to see movies these days who probably read far more of the reviews and decide not to go and see it. And that might be part of the reason cinemas are suffering a little bit. There's many other reasons, of course. Yeah. But she was talking about this beach that has got some pigs on it. And she said, "Oh, it looks amazing. I want to go see the beach. I want to go to the beach with the pigs on it. It'll be so amazing." I say, "Well, fantastic. Go do that." So then she comes back to me this morning and goes, "Oh, there's only 7 pigs. There's only 7 pigs. I've read about it. There's only 7 pigs on the beach." I say, "You see, now you sport it for yourself. Sometimes you've just got to have an idea of what it might be and head towards it, because if you don't, you'll easily talk your way out of things." And I think that's maybe what it comes down to. Maybe
that's the downside of human nature, isn't it? Yeah. Well, look, I've got 5 habits out for you now. I'm going to recap them. So not be afraid to talk to people. I talked about the benefits of that, being able to widen your horizons by taking in other people's opinions. And the only way you get started with that is a conversation, I guess. Don't stick with fixed plans, or don't stick too rigidly to the fixed plans. So that's something we've learned in business. It's something you're passing on to your kids, and I pass on to mine as well. And and confidence, don't give up. Persistence will pay off. So it's about heading down a line and just being confident that it's the right line for you. And I like the next one because it's very much about innovation for me. It's build on things and rise to the challenges that those things put in front of you. And then we've got the final one, which is about seeking your utopia, not someone else's. And have a good think about what your utopia might be like in the first place. But if you follow the previous 4 habits, all that stuff fits very nicely together. Well, Ian, it's been an absolute pleasure. I feel that we should plug some stuff here, as you and I are here.
Yes, this is both our business, isn't it?
Right.
What have you got? What do you want me to show?
Okay, on the table there, we've got, explain that one.
Oh, gosh. C charts. So I think that's another thing that's, I mean, these should be ideally suited towards SplashMaps. They're durable, washable, they'll survive any weather and everything else. But so printing C charts is number 1. And secondly, doing it on... is this the towel like?
That's the microfiber towel. So this is super fast.
So what could be more attractive than lying on the beach in your bikini, David, and having a microfiber towel with a C chart on it?
Yeah.
I could think of
that
many
wasn't
things,
directly
actually.
At me, was it? That was.
It was, but
general.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we've got things like we got lens cloths. We've got lens cloths that could do brilliant things with. And as Ian was saying, the latest thing for us is to be able to double-side print. And in the future, those electronic fabric maps will be coming out. And we've got more fun and more research going with Southampton University coming up in the very near future.
That's true.
So all of that is great. I guess we should do it. Another quick plug. We can offer 10% off the Armchair Adventure Festival that got mentioned earlier on. Do come along to that. John Blashford-Snell's going to be brilliant there, but just meeting the sidecar guys who run the whole show. They were in episode 7, so come along, meet them, meet us. And anything that you want to say as a goodbye note, Ian?
No, it's just been a pleasure to be able to show my face and hopefully never to be seen
Out from the shadowy
Out
shadows.
from the shadows. But it's the whole journey with SplashMaps is been a roller coaster, but one that's an amazingly enjoyable roller coaster. You know, I think for anybody starting out in doing a business, it can go extremely well, it can go extremely badly, but usually people fall somewhere in between that, and it is an absolute pleasure to be in business with you, David.
Well, man, it's all about being in good company, I reckon. Boom. Right, cut.